Salut à tous. Dans cette seconde partie, Malachi Martin lève le voile sur les mécanismes cachés du Nouvel Ordre Mondial. 3 piliers dominent ce système global: gouvernement, multinational et ONG. Les religions, reléguées à un rôle mineur. Même l'Église catholique n'échappe pas à cette transformation, vidée de sa puissance spirituelle et réduite à une simple institution parmi d'autres. Martin dénonce une uniformisation mondiale, imposant des règles économiques qui écrasent les identités culturelles et spirituelles au profit d'une froide culture matérialiste. Pire encore, il révèle un plan visant à contrôler totalement le Vatican, remodelant l'Église pour servir des intérêts mondains. Mais tout espoir n'est pas perdu. Les prophéties de Fatima et de la Salette promettent une intervention divine imminente. Selon lui, le temps presse, et le choc pourrait être plus proche que nous l'imaginons. Alors, restez avec nous pour des révélations cruciales sur l'avenir spirituel et culturel de notre monde. La suite s'annonce explosive. N'oubliez pas de liker cette vidéo, de la partager avec vos proches et de vous abonner pour ne rien manquer. Merci pour votre soutien et à très bientôt.
In the first interview, we discussed Windswept House, the major theme of which was the apostasy, the ultimate source of which was Lucifer. And now I would like to discuss some of the characteristics of the New World Order that they're trying to put in place. What are the main characteristics of the New World Order that's coming into place towards the end of the 20th century?
Well, I'll tell you about it. It's a very important question because a lot of people, when they hear about a New World Order, say, oh, that means a new world government. There'll be one government that will govern everybody. And that's not the idea of the New World Order, number one. Number two, the New World Order, in its essence, is already here. It's established. We can't get out of it. Whether you like it or not, or whether you like it or whether you know it, it is here. What is this? It's this, that today there is no country which cannot be divided into 3 parts. There's always the government, and it's more and more important than it ever was before. There's the business community, and then there's a group of things called NGOs, non-governmental organizations. Everything from mad mothers against drunk drivers over to the Catholic Church. That's where the church is today. That's where religion is. It's simply one of a mass of civil organizations that are competing in the public square.
So it's being demoted.
That's right. I mean, when something happens nowadays, they don't say, what does the church think? No, no, no. It's what scientists think, what business think, what government thinks. And also, if some priest wants to talk, or some minister or rabbi wants to talk, they will listen. But it's only... Now, that's the composition of the modern world. Every nation we know, even China itself, divides falls into that fact. That's number one characteristic of the New World Order. That religion has become just one of the non-governmental organizations competing in the marketplace for popularity and for adherence. The second characteristic is this, that nowadays no nation, and this is the chiefest effect of the New World Order, no nation can survive unless it shares in the globalized money. What does that mean? It means that the daily flow of capital and the flow of capital goods is regulated by global rules. And if you don't share in that, you perish. For instance, what happened in North Korea? Do you remember 5, 6 years ago, they were threatening to lob missiles at us. Now what they're doing, they're knocking at the door. They're hungry because they don't belong to international trade. They're just beginning to realize that they can't sell or buy anywhere, and they're starving, by the way. South Korea is now giving food to North Korea.
Now this is a change because we can remember in the 1930s how Stalin built his socialism in one country.
Sure.
that doesn't seem to be the program today, because like even the Chinese communists have integrated themselves into the world economy.
And they're trading and buying and selling to billions, to the tune of billions on both sides. At first, I think Albania. Albania said, no, we're communists. Now they're in complete chaos because they try to stay outside. Now they're no longer outside, they're nowhere, they're in chaos.
Now,
so the point I'm making is that no country can subsist today unless it belongs to the global rules. And one of the global rules is that the flow of capital and the flow of capital goods produced by capital, you must participate in that, or else, buddy, you are for the grave.
now, does that mean that communism is dead? Let's say like that in China, they now have elements of market economy?
Communism is dead. Marxism is not, as a method of thought. Marxism is not, as a method of thought.
So Marxism is more than just a command-style economy.
An ideology. An ideology. And it's basically this. Its main tenets are so simple. Man is an animal, a highly organized animal, period. Nothing more. Number one. Number two, there's only this life. There's only matter. Smells, sounds, sights, dimensions. That's all there is. And thirdly, the state is finally the most powerful organ, and that's what's happened. The government in every country is far more important than it ever was before. And in this country, the same thing. And we can't get rid of the government any longer.
So the central organizing principle, let's say, of Marxism never was a centrally controlled economy. It was this worldly mentality.
That's right. That's what Marx was building up.
And so let's say Chinese communism has undergone, let's say, a metamorphosis.
Sure it is. And they now have one whole area which is thoroughly capitalistic. And for instance, there are Chinese returning and building houses in Shanghai. They're millionaires. There's no difficulty. The Chinese are very practical and just is to make money. Now what they do maintain is government control of the masses, because then they have cheap labor. They have cheap labor. And they can kill as many babies as they want to and keep the population down. It's already 1 billion point something. So they can do all that. But that's Marxism, not communism. Communism is a joke. Nobody ever prospered under communism. The Soviet Union collapsed, imploded because of communism, and it created havoc in all these countries, Romania, Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia, and East Germany. They were in ruins, and Poland, at the end of their communist life.
But here's a question I have. If, let's say, what is officially the Communist Party of China has adopted a market economy,
sure,
and we in the West have adopted this worldly view and implemented, let's say, a liberal abortion policy, what difference is there between us and them?
None. None, except we have more liberal laws, and we have a system of justice which is more liberal, certainly as regards the criminal.
But these are differences of degree, not of kind.
No difference in kind. I'm sorry. Now, we have more tolerance here, less and less, by the way, for churches, for religions. We have less and less.
So there is, let's say, that's our kind of a capital that has been built up over the Christian centuries that we're now living off, and this still has, let's say, a positive influence in countries like America and Canada and Great Britain.
A little, only a little. What you're really saying, Bernard, if you think, you're saying there's convergence.
Yes.
We're converging finally to the same system. And by the way, George Shultz went with, who it was, Ronnie Reagan, to Moscow in the 1980s, and they wrote down, they composed the famous cultural agreement, which means that what they're laboring now in Moscow and in New York, the Carnegie Endowment for the Humanities here, and then a thing called Informatic in Moscow, they are producing the same textbooks for children in Russia as here, as in Borneo, as in Latin America, as everywhere, only the language will be different. So children will learn the same things everywhere, and there'll be homogeneity.
Now, this is a point I want to stop at right here, because it seems like the globalists, what they want to do is to level or snuff out kind of the local particularisms of any kind.
That's right. That's right. And you see, here's the terrible thing for Americans when they realize it, which is not yet. There will come a time, shortly, when laws affecting their salaries, the place they live, their housing, their taxes, their travels, their family, will be made by non-Americans.
Isn't this actually the issue that got Margaret Thatcher so furious towards the end of her rule as Prime Minister? The fact that more and more British sovereignty was passing into the hands of the European Union.
Was being eroded and passed on with the European Union. That's what now makes the big opposition in Britain. They know that when they enter the European Union, when they have monetary union in 1999, that is the end of Britain as they know it. So much so, Bernard, I think there's going to be big resistance to this European Union at the last moment. They may have to enter it, and they may go under, be submerged, and it'll be the end of England as we have known it. But to revert to the situation with the New World Order, Americans will find this out too late, and they can't do anything about it. What can we do when the laws are made by others? And for instance, the NAFTA agreement affects jobs here. Can we do anything about it? No, sir. And the World Trade Organization, of which we're signatories, are going to make laws about world trade that will affect our jobs and our money and our dollar and our salaries. We can't do anything about it. We are caught in it. There's no escaping this. We're in the New World Order. Now, here's the point. Remember we spoke about the advancement in the medical field, the health field, and the development of abortion and contraception as a means of accustoming people to another way of looking at the human body, and the development of the human frame, and finally the goal of having subhuman culture. That's all part of the same system. Create a paradise on earth for the elite. Period.
Now, the argument has been that what we would have is a global economy, but the culture would be decided locally. But when I, let's say, pick up the papers and read, let's say, about your home country of Ireland, it seems like the same pressure is causing the Irish culture to break down. They now are passing laws opening up abortion and divorce.
Absolutely. And it's that. And the culture is, the ancient culture, the Christian culture, is being eroded. There's no doubt about that. It's being eroded. For instance, there's a thing called river dance. I don't know if you've seen it. It's the Irish dance. And it's the first time the Irish have produced something which has no religious aspect. It's based on myth, and it's based on pagan myth, and it's based on pagan belief. But if you haven't come across it, it's something else. So the culture is being eroded and replaced with this new culture.
But doesn't this new culture kind of create what you had very much in the Soviet Union, kind of a drabness?
Of course it does. Of course it does. And people are getting bored with it. There are more suicides, and people are revolting against it. But we can't do anything about it. Whether we like it or not, we're walking into it. And we're going to be subjected to the same godless, sometimes pornographic television and amusement. There'll be no mention of God. There'll be no mention of eternal life. There's no mention of religion. That's the transcendent view that's excluded from the public square in America, according to the Supreme Court. And that's the New World Order. Now, what's going to happen? Well, is it going to go hunky-dory like that, and will we finally find ourselves faced with the faceless state government making laws that we can't disobey, and that confine us and really erode our religion? No, it won't go like that. It will not go through, because we have a solemn promise that God so loved this world that He sent His only begotten Son in order to save it. And we have also the promises of Our Lady, and several big occasions at La Salette in France in 1846, because we're an old religion, and at Fatima in 1917, and at Garabandal in 1963. Those three alone tell us that God is going to step in and chastise this world and punish it for killing 500 million babies a year, and for oppressing, and for shedding of blood, and for starving people, and inciting wars, and finally destroying the innocence of youth with pornography. God's going to step in, and step in soon. And nobody that I know of any stature at all in the church today, or in religion, thinks it's going to come in 200 years' time. It's around the corner. It's coming fast.
Now, is this why, and you talked about this, I think that was the very first scene in Windswept House in 1957, when the dignitaries of the six first countries of the, at that time it was the European Economic Community, met with the Pope, that the Pope, Pius XII, foresaw that they would have their day, but it would only be a day.
It's only a day. It's only a day, because God is in his heaven. And Bernard, I hate making predictions, because human predictions are so fallible. But, and I may not live, I'm 76, I may not live long enough to see this, but I know that within a short time, you, a young man, will see the hand of God punishing the world around you. And you included, because you're part of the world, and your family too.
Now here is an issue that I would like to raise, and that's that there seems like, and you've alluded to this already in our conversations, that there is no escape. There's no place in the world that I can, let's say, move to and escape all the problems.
You can now, there are several communities, one in Idaho, one in Kansas, this is St. Joseph's, Kansas, and in various other places, and in Canada, there are a few mentioned to me, now we get in conversations, but they won't save you. They won't save anybody.
So it's not possible to entirely freeze out the world?
No. No. If you go down to the Pampas in Argentina, if you travel to the Gobi Desert, if you go anywhere, it's going to come after you, because the whole world is then trailed in it. And then, as far as we know, the best judgment is that the chastisement is going to affect everybody, whether you live in the middle of the Gobi Desert, or in Kathmandu, Nepal, or on the Pampas of Argentina, or hide beneath the ocean in a bubble. It will still get to you. Now,
isn't there an unfairness here? Because, let's say, many families and good priests have done their best and led virtuous lives, and yet they're going to suffer from this that was caused, let's say, by the immorality of other people.
Sure, but remember when Christ was on his way to Calvary, and the women were crying over him, crying over his pains and his torture. He said, "Don't cry for me, because I'm just a greenwood. You're the dry. Cry for yourselves and your children." There's a law there which is funny. For instance, if you and I get married, and if you are a lush, a woman who's drunk, and I'm a cocaine addict, and you conceive, the baby is going to be alcoholic probably, and it's going to have AIDS, if I have AIDS, or one of us have AIDS. Why doesn't God save the baby? Punish us, but why not say He doesn't save the baby? And if, when Adam and Eve ate that apple, or whatever they ate, why does He punish me? I didn't eat the apple. He has this law. And as the Bible says, the fathers ate sour grapes, but the children's teeth are blood. In other words, the children are punished for what the fathers did. And that's God's law.
So God's law, and this is a theme too that emerged from Windswept House, is that there is salvation through suffering.
That's right. That's right. There's salvation through suffering, but there will be suffering caused by the sins of others. And the typical example is the baby was aborted by its mother or its father. Well, it did nothing to merit such awful torture, but yet it's punished. Why does God allow it? Why doesn't He punish the parents? He doesn't. The baby, He punishes the parents later. But the baby suffers the dire pains of having an evil father and an evil mother. Similarly, war, I mean, the amount of people that were killed in the last war, in the Second World War, that had no doing with it, and they had nothing to do with it at all. That's God's law, and it started with Adam and Eve. And by the way, we can all have a conversation with Adam and Eve later on. By the way, the church never called them Saint Adam or Saint Eve. Have you ever noticed that? Churches say Saint Abraham is a saint, and David is a saint, and Isaiah is a saint, and Jeremiah is a saint, but Adam and Eve are never described as saints. Ever. Because I think we have a bone, a crow to pluck with them, or a bone to pick with them. Because they did let us down. And because they did what they did, you and I are in our present quandary today, the possibility of going to hell. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for them. So don't grumble at me, it's unfair. Of course it's unfair, but you see, when you get to that region of unfairness, we have no right. God is God.
And maybe he's trying to tell us that to build an earthly paradise just isn't possible.
He never destined this. He never wanted this. And Christ himself said to the apostles in that Last Supper, he said, but now it's the hour of the prince of this world and the hours of the powers of darkness, but he has nothing on me. He has no power over me. It's totally independent of the world and of the prince of this world. And that's why it's grieving. It's very grievous. And it grieves me an awful lot to find people talking about building a paradise and building a habitat for men and women and establishing universal fraternity and brotherhood. That's fine and dandy if you want to do that politically, but that's not the work of salvation. The work of salvation is, you're in mortal sin, I'm going to forgive your sins. You're dying, I'm going to shrive you so that you go straight to heaven. That's what I can promise you. Nothing else. Nothing else.
So the problems in this life that, let's say, might flow out of this New World Order is just crosses, again, that good Catholics have to bear.
That's right. That's right. And be the butt, because we are the enemies. We're the only enemies. Because if they get rid of us, if they got rid of the Catholic Church, which they won't, then all other religions would collapse. There'd be no reason. Nobody would subsist. No Christian religion would start, but it would continue, and no Judaism would succeed. It would be all over. And the sacrament of the Mass would stop. There would no longer be a blessed sacrament, no chapel, no worship, and the eternal sacrifice the prophet Malachi speaks about would have ceased, and the world would come to an end. So we are essential, and Lucifer knows that. And he knows too he's going to be beaten, but he's doing his damnedest, as they say, to take as many with him, because he doesn't take prisoners.
Now, the focus of Windswept House was the Holy Father.
That's right.
Is that one of the key elements of this Luciferian movement of building the New World Order, is to gain some measure of control over the papacy?
But correct that statement, to gain total control. Total control. Because if you don't have total control of the papacy, just partial control of part of the papal government, the other part is going to go against you. You must control it completely. And there are two ways of control. Either I control because I give you direct orders and you fulfill them, or I make it in such a way that you fulfill my will, my commands, without knowing it.
And that's perhaps the situation. The second scenario is perhaps the situation then that we have today.
For the majority. They think they're okay. They think it's fine. But some of them have lost the faith. Others are weak. And they don't want to go against the grain. They don't want to stand up and be counted. They don't want to rock the boat. I know middle of the road Monsignore and bishops, good priests, who never sold their soul, never anything, never committed sins really, are just and good, but they won't do anything. They will go along with anything that's proposed. And that I think is as bad as the person who fulfills the evil commands of Lucifer. I think it's just as bad. You're permitting things to happen.
These are the lukewarm souls we're talking about here.
And the The first curse in the Apocalypse is, because you're neither hot nor cold, I'm going to spit you out of my mouth.